All right, to get the most out of this DVD, you should be aware of three things. You should be familiar with the chords that we're soloing over, the scales that we're using, and you should know what a lick is. Sounds simple, we're doing a bunch of licks, but what is a lick? Well, let's start there. A lick is a short, repetitive phrase that hopefully has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's it, but there's lots of different ways that you can play licks. Let's take a few notes to start with. I'll be in the key of G. I'm going to start off just using the G blues scale, and here's a lick using the G blues scale. I had a beginning, had a little breath in the middle, had an ending. So there's a lick. I can play that lick over and over again. Now the notes, so you can play along with me, are on the G string 6, 5 to 3, 5 to 3, down to the D string 5, back to the G string 3 two times, and then down to the 5th fret of the D string. So there's the lick. I got a little rhythm to it. I got all those sections that I need, the beginning, middle, and little rhythm. Once again. So now that we've got those notes, here are some other techniques we can use to make those notes come to life a little bit. One thing that's common in blues soloing, and rock soloing, and many kinds of soloing, but especially in blues, are slides. So what if we slide into the note first from below? So we'll start off from the 5th fret of the G string and slide into our first note on the 6th fret of the G string. Sounds a little more interesting already. Now why don't we try sliding into that first note from above? Let's try it again. We can also use hammer-ons. This is when we strike the first note and then we simply hammer on without re-striking the second note. So let's see if we can hammer on from the 5th fret of the G string to the 6th fret of the G string. And then we'll continue with our lick. Once again. The opposite of a hammer-on is a pull-off. Same idea, we strike the first note, but the second note will be lower in pitch than the first note, and we're not going to re-strike that second note. So here's an example using a pull-off. So I started off with a hammer-on from 5 to 6 on the G string, and now I'll pull off 5 to 3 on the G string, and again, and continue the rest of the lick. So here I start off with a hammer-on, and then I have some pull-offs. Another technique that we can use is bending, and this is what really separates electric guitar in general from playing acoustic guitar, is the ability to bend the notes easily. So if we want to get to the 6th fret of the G string, why don't we start from the 5th fret of the G string and bend up a half step. So here's the 5th fret of the G. We want to try and bend into that note. You'll have to just use your ears here and try and figure out how much you have to bend in order to reach that pitch. There's the pitch. And now let's apply that to the rest of the lick. I also did some pull-offs there. Another thing that's common in blues is often we don't have to bend perfectly into pitch. We don't have to bend a half step or a whole step exactly. We can bend in between. So here's an example of a quarter step bend, just a really small, small bend I'm going to do from the 3rd fret of the G string. Sounds like this. So I started off with my half step bend, pull off, back to the 5th fret of the D. When I get to the 3rd fret of the G string here, I'm going to give that just a slight bend, roughly a quarter step. So you hear the difference with no bend and with a slight bend. Gives the licks a more vocal quality where we can go in between the notes without playing each note perfectly like we would say if we were playing on a piano where everything is a half step apart. Here we can get those notes in between. Now the last thing you may notice on that note that I ended with, the G note on the 5th fret of the D string, I'm playing a vibrato there. This is where we simply bend the note rapidly and evenly so that it gives the note a singing, more sustaining quality to it. The note will sustain longer, it'll sound a little nicer. I try and get that vibrato to be even, and it comes from the wrist, kind of like when you're turning a key in a lock. It's got that kind of emotion. So I put all of this together, half step bend, some pull-offs, quarter step bend, little vibrato. We've gone from this to this. So those are some techniques to keep in mind, and they can really help you out to sound more bluesy. Everybody knows the same scales. Why are some people more effective? Often it's down to these little small details in technique that can really help your licks come to life. So keep these things in mind as we go through the licks in this DVD.